Hello, Dr. Cisse covering anatomy and physiology. Today we'll talk about the spinal nerves. Little reminder, we're talking about the nervous system here. The nervous system is one of the 11 organ systems in a human body. The nervous system is divided into two parts, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system is made of the brain and the spinal cord. And the peripheral nervous system is made of the nerves that come out of the brain or out of the spinal cord. If the nerves come out of the brain, we call them cranial nerves. We have 12 of those. If they come out of the spinal cord, we call them spinal nerves, and we have 31 of those. Today's video, just about the spinal nerves. Now let's look at the pictures here. On your left, you see the nervous system. The blue in the middle is the central nervous system, brain and spinal cord. Yellow on the side, peripheral nervous system made of nerves. And you see ganglia. On the right side, it just shows you the general function of the nervous system. You have, in the peripheral nervous system, sensory neurons. It means cells that receive information with their receptor. Those sensory neurons will take the information to the central nervous system, the brain or the spinal cord. And the brain and the spinal cord have interneurons. They will interact, talking to each other, give a command. And that command will be carried on by a motor neuron. Now, if you go to the nervous system, you're not going to see them divided like this. We just did it so you can understand. They're together as a nerve. So the lecture today is to explain how they're together and they get divided. How come the afferent and efferent, the sensory and the motor, how do they come together and go out together to the spinal cord? Now, we're going to be able to describe the nerve and the ganglia, the difference between ganglia and nuclei. And we're going to be able to describe the spinal nerve, the branches, and the plexuses, and then the name of few nerves. There are 31 pairs of spinal nerves. Why they're called spinal nerves? Well, because they come from the spinal cord, right? So we have 8 cervical, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, 5 sacral, 5 coccygeal. Now, this sounds like a vertebrae, right? The only difference is going to be 8 cervical. Remember, we have 7 cervical vertebrae. It is because we have a nerve that comes from the top of the first vertebrae, C1, and the bottom of C7. The rest of stuff just is the same number as the thoracic vertebrae we talk about, the bones. So what is the function of spinal nerves? They connect the spinal cord with the rest of the body. So the peripheral nervous system job is just to take nerve ending to every part of your body to connect it to the spinal cord so that the spinal cord can inform your brain about it. Just like a pathway, right? So what is the nerve? A cord-like organ. So it's an organ like a cord, like a rope. There's made of many, many axons bound together by connective tissue. If they're mixed nerves, it means that they have sensory taking information in and motor give a command out. We talked about this before. Look at this. We have ascending, descending track. You can see that on this slice of the spinal cord with the gray matter in the middle, white matter outside, you see some track here in the column. Well, you can see that there's a part that comes in with a little bump called the ganglia and the part that comes out with the motor neuron. So what is the neuron and what is the nerve? What is the ganglia? What is the cell body? Here you can tell. We have 5 neurons here. So neurons are cells. Each cell has dendrite, cell body, and axon terminal. If you put a lot of neurons next to each other or on top of each other, they form fiber. The axon part of it become the nerve, but the cell body part of it become the ganglia in the peripheral nervous system. So nerve fibers also have layers. They're covered by stuff, just like muscles. Here you can see the nerve fibers in the peripheral nervous system are covered by Schwann cell. Remember, if it was a central nervous system, it will be what? Oligodendrocyte. So the Schwann cell form the neural lemma, the covering of the neuron, and the myelin sheath, which is the very top of it. And then we're going to have 3 layers depending on where you have them. Endoneurium, perineurium, epineurium. Just same thing as muscle, endomysium or mysium, perimysium, and epimysium. So it's going to be almost the same thing. If you look at this nerve fiber, You can look at the spinal cord with gray matter in butterfly or age, white matter here. You can see there are two little roots or rootlets, few rootlets that can become a root, and then the nerve. Now, the one with the bump is called posterior root ganglia. It's just a bunch of cell bodies together of a unipolar neuron. Then you can see that ganglia is taking sensory information, sensory neurons to the spinal cord. And when the information is processed, it's going to take motor command out back. Now, they get mixed up here. If you come down, they're made of fascicle. So the whole nerve, spinal nerve, is covered by the epineurium. Then each fascicle that makes up the nerve is covered by the perineurium. And if you take the fascicle out, you can see muscle, nerve fibers, looks like muscle fiber, right? Nerve fiber covered by the endoneurium. So endoneurium is the first one inside, it's between the nerve fiber, and then the fascicle covered by perineurium, and the nerve, spinal nerve itself covered by the epineurium. So the sensory and motor neurons in the nerves. What does that mean? It means that the part of the information that we have to take in is taken by the sensory division by the sensory nerves or the afferent division of this nervous system. And then the motor command is given by the motor nerves in the efferent division of the nervous system. Many of them are mixed nerve. That means the nerve has both sensory and motor. And the sensory neuron motor can go into a somatic, like a muscle, or it could go to your internal organ. If you go to somatic, we call that somatic, afferent or efferent. If you go to the visceral, we call it visceral afferent, coming from the visceral. But if it's going to the visceral, it's called visceral motor or autonomic. And that autonomic can be what? Sympathetic or parasympathetic. And it could be also spatial or general sense. General sense being like touch, pressure, and stuff from your scene. And spatial could be like spatial organ, like your hearing, your taste, or sight, stuff like that. Look at this one, the ganglia. If you look at the slice, like the transverse cut of the spinal cord, you see the butterfly, the gray matter, the white matter around it. You see the dorsal root ganglia, the bump here, and the ventral root. The dorsal takes information in, and it has cell bodies of unipolar neuron, because the unipolar neuron are sensory neuron. They come in. You can see the red direction here, the red arrow, tell you that the information comes in through the dorsal root, and the command is coming out through the ventral root. The spinal nerve is therefore the combination of the posterior and the anterior roots. The posterior is the sensory, and the anterior is what? The motor output, take out the command. Now, when you go out and further down the distal branches, the nerves, the spinal nerve will branch out into different pieces. We call them rami, one ramus. So you have anterior ramus and posterior ramus. The anterior ramus will come to the front side. If it's in the thoracic region, it will go between the intercostal muscles. It'll go in between the intercostal muscle. But if it's going to be the rest of the body, interior or posterior, it will form plexuses. Now, in the posterior ramus, the one going to the back, it will go into the muscle and joint in the region of the spine and the skin of the back. And then we have meningeal branches that will innervate the meninges, the layers of the spinal cord. Look at the branches of a spinal nerve. Going to the back, you see the posterior here. You got the posterior ramus going to the back. It's going to innervate the back part of the body. But the interior ramus will be divided into pieces again, right? So those interior ramus, if it's not the trunk area, it will be in plexuses. So you can see here the picture. This is the back, so it will be interior, posterior. That means sensory. The front will be what? Motor. So you see the posterior median sulcus, so it's going to be the back side. You got gracilis fasciculi. We talk about this in the pathway, ascending and descending. So you can see all these neurons will follow some kind of direction. The sensory will follow one to go to the brain. The motor will come in back down to give command to the body to do something. The rami of the spinal nerve. So the interior ramus in the thoracic region, it gives right to the intercostal nerves. Any part, it will be plexuses. Let's talk about those plexuses. But here you can see that the nerves are just branch out to go every part of your body if you think about it, right? So the somatosensory and motor function of the plexus, it means that when the nerves are branched out, some are taking information in, we call the somatosensory neuron. Some are giving the command. So sensory from the back, motor from the front. Sensory posterior, motor anterior. The spinal nerve plexus, it means that we have web-like nerves that will branch out to serve every part of your body. We got the cervical plexus, brachial plexus, lumbar plexus, sacral, and coccygeal plexus. We'll talk about this in detail. Cervical plexus, of course, cervical is going to be in the neck. You'll be supplying the neck and the phrenic nerve to the diaphragm. So the diaphragm gets its neuron from the cervical. The brachial supply the upper limb. The median nerve, we talk about this, carpal tunnel syndrome, when you have using your hand a lot, is affected because of the damage of the median nerve in your arm. The lumbar plexus, abdominal wall, inferior thigh, like the quadricep and the genitalia area. And the sacral plexus, the remainder of the lower and lower trunk and lower limb. The coccygeal, the muscle of perineum. Let's talk about this here. The cervical plexus. Now, I don't intend you to know the name of every nerve here, but you just need to have an idea about which plexus serving which part of the body. Think about it here. If you have the supraclavicular nerve, of course, it's above the clavicle, it makes sense, it will be cervical plexus. And you have the transverse cervical nerve, cervical, right? So usually it kind of makes sense, right? It kind of makes sense if you see so the most important thing here will be the phrenic nerve. Then the brachial plexus. Here also you got the ulnar nerve, the radial nerve, the median nerve, carpal tunnel syndrome. You can see you can follow all the way to the carpal area, or the musculocutaneous nerve. You see the brachial nerve here. You see the musculocutaneous nerve. You see the medial cord here, right? And you see the ulnar nerve, the radial nerve is going to go down here. Then you got the lumbar plexus. In the lumbar plexus, you can see the gray area here is going to be from the lumbar plexus, but the yellow is the sacral plexus. So the yellow here, which is the sciatic nerve, a big nerve here, is part of the sacral plexus. So you can see here we have the femoral nerve, right? The femoral, just a femur. And then the rest, the yellow here are what? The sacral plexus. So the sacral plexus, we talked about the sciatic nerve already. And the coccygeal plexus, you can see the inferior gluteal nerve. So gluteal muscles are being innervated by that nerve. So the cutaneous innervation in dermatome just means every nerve in your body is serving a particular part of your body. Okay? So we call that dermatome. Let me show you a picture here. You can see, for example, if you take C2, what part it innervates, C5, what part. You can see, for example, T1, your trunk and part of your arm. And then you can see, for example, the L1, L2. So every nerve has a specific part of the body it innervates. We call them a dermatome map, right? Well, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in class. The spinal nerve, you need to kind of watch the video a few times to get a grip of all the nerves we have in the body. All right, thank you very much, and I'll see you in class.